I matched with Dax on a dating app almost a month before any of this went down. He was around my age, lived right there in Phoenix too. We'd gone out a few times, casual dinners, and he seemed totally normal. So I didn't think twice when he asked me out again. We met at this bar downtown, had a couple drinks, and just talked for hours. I didn't even realize how late it had gotten until it was almost midnight. "Hey, why don't we take this back to your place?" Dax said. "Yeah, I'd love that." I got in my car and headed out. Almost immediately, I noticed this beat-up beige Camry in my rearview mirror. It had been hanging back a few car lengths ever since we left the bar. I pointed it out to Dax. "I think that car is following us." He glanced in the mirror and shook his head. "Nah, I'm pretty sure they just pulled out. You're being paranoid." He laughed it off, but I wasn't imagining things. That car followed us all the way to my house. When I pulled into my driveway, it slowed down just enough that I could see the driver. It was an older woman, gray hair, just staring at us as she crept past. It sent a chill straight through me. I jumped out of my car and rushed to unlock my front door. Dax followed right behind me. I locked up and checked the window. The Camry was gone. I felt a little better. Maybe I really was just being paranoid. Maybe it was all just one big coincidence. Dax stood in my living room, glancing around. "Nice place." "Thanks." I went to the kitchen to grab us something to drink, and when I came back, he was already settled on the couch, smiling at me. I sat down next to him. We talked for a few minutes, and then he leaned in. We were right there, about to kiss, when something pounded against the front door, hard. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I got up and looked through the peephole. Nobody there. "Who is it?" "Nobody. Probably just a cat or something. Come here." He pulled me back onto the couch and started laying on the compliments, telling me how beautiful I was, how much he loved spending time with me. I blushed and started to relax again. Then, suddenly, I felt Dax go completely stiff beside me. His eyes were locked on something just past my head, fixed on the window behind me. "What are you staring at?" The curtains. It's just weird when the curtains are open like that. Can you close them?" It was a strange thing to say, but I got up and closed them anyway. I don't know exactly what time it was when I woke up. Maybe 2, maybe 3 in the morning. When I opened my eyes, Dax was sitting up in bed. I started to sit up too, and immediately felt the cold press of metal against my throat. I tilted my head just slightly. A knife blade. My soul almost left my body. My hands started shaking. My heart was going absolutely insane. The old woman from the Camry was standing right beside my bed. Her face was maybe an inch from mine, eyes bloodshot, burning with pure rage, gray hair completely wild and tangled. She had a knife pressed against my throat. "I told you I'd buy you all the new dolls you wanted, but you are not allowed to have a human girlfriend. That was the deal. How dare you betray me like this?" She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to Dax. "I'm done with the dolls, Mom. I want a real girl. I'm not a kid anymore. You can't control me." The creepy guy was her son. Before I could even process what was happening, Dax launched himself at her and tried to wrestle the knife out of her hands. They started fighting, screaming at each other, throwing things across the room, and then the knife hit the floor. I didn't wait. I jumped out of that bed and ran out of my room and straight down the hall. I threw myself into the guest room and locked the door. Thank God I'd grabbed my phone. I dialed 911. "Please help me. There's someone in my house with a knife." I could hear them still going at it outside the door, screaming, breaking things. I pressed my back against the wall and just shook. The dispatcher stayed on the line and told me the police were on their way. A few minutes later, I heard faint sirens in the distance. Right on cue, the screaming stopped. I waited for Dax or his unhinged mother to come knocking at that door. Nothing happened. Then, police cars pulled up outside. I slowly unlocked the door, peeked through the crack to check the hall, then slipped downstairs. 3 officers were sweeping the house. They were gone. The front door was open. Both of them had bolted. The police searched the whole area. Never found either of them. Never found the Camry either. Dax's dating profile was deleted. His social media had vanished. He'd blocked my number. I moved out the following week. And I'm done with online dating. because every time I think about trying again, I get stuck on the fact that Dax seemed completely, totally normal the whole time. I never once picked up that he was playing me the entire night. He knew his mother was out there lurking in the dark, and he had me close the blinds himself. I keep wondering if I was just one more girl in a long line of them, just another person who almost got swallowed up by whatever sick, twisted dynamic those two had going on. I'm just grateful I made it out. That mother-son dynamic was twisted. If you're brave enough to clear the next 2 stories, lock your doors, like and subscribe to the channel, and let's see what's waiting in the dark. That was truly one of the coldest nights ever. I was 17, fresh out of Atlanta, feeling like I could take on the whole world. So when my boys dared me to break into this rundown house and film myself walking around for 10 minutes, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Didn't even think twice about it. They said it'd be easy because nobody had lived there in years. I figured it'd just be a quick little thrill, something I'd post online later for the views. The house sat on the edge of town in this sketchy neighborhood. Overgrown yard, boarded up windows. It looked completely abandoned, like nobody had stepped foot in there in forever. I went around back, found a window with broken glass, and climbed through. My phone was already recording. I needed 10 minutes of footage to prove I actually did it. The second I got inside, I regretted it. The kitchen was disgusting. Rotting food sitting out on the counters, roaches crawling on every single surface. The smell hit me so hard I almost threw up right there. It smelled like something had died in that house. But I'd already started and I had to finish the challenge. I pushed through the kitchen into a hallway and found a room on the ground floor. There was a mattress thrown on the floor, needles scattered around it, empty bottles everywhere. Looking at all that, it hit me. This wasn't some abandoned place. This was a neglected house. Someone was actually living here. I should have turned around right then. I knew I was trespassing, but I was already 5 minutes in, and I only needed 5 more. I kept filming, kept moving through the other rooms. Everything was filthy. Trash everywhere, water damage creeping down the walls, mold growing in the corners. I started up the staircase, and every single step groaned under me like it was about to give out completely. When I got to the top, there was a hallway with 3 closed doors. I headed for the one at the end, probably the master bedroom. And then, out of nowhere, I heard a woman screaming from inside the room, completely furious. "You ruined my submission. That was for the design contest. I told you 100 times not to touch my desk when I'm not here." Then a man's voice roared back, loaded with aggression. "Oh, come on. It was just a little coffee spill. I tried to wipe it up. Stop being so dramatic. It's not like I did it on purpose." My heart dropped into my stomach. There were people in there. Then, without any warning, I heard a loud, sharp slap. The woman cried out in pain and burst into tears. My first thought was it was some homeless couple living in the abandoned house having a domestic dispute. I should have run. I should have gotten out of there immediately. But some stupid part of me thought it would make the video even better, so I crept closer to the door with my phone still rolling. It was cracked open. I peeked inside. What I saw made my heart stop. The guy was standing right in front of a mirror, wearing nothing but his boxers. His face was a mess, smeared with thick, badly applied makeup. And he was arguing with his own reflection, switching back and forth between a deep man's voice and a woman's voice. The woman's voice would scream something, then the man's voice would fire right back. A full, violent argument with himself in the mirror. Just as I raised my phone to get a better shot, he went completely silent. I froze. Didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched him go still too. After one long second, he slowly turned his head and looked me dead in the eyes. We locked eyes. For just a fraction of a second, neither of us moved. Then he opened his mouth and let out this absolutely horrifying animal shriek. He started laughing like he lost his mind, ripping at his own hair, slamming his fists into his own face over and over. I spun around and bolted down the hallway, flying down the stairs. I could hear him behind me, running, laughing, screaming. He crashed down the staircase. I hit the kitchen, leapt through the broken window, landed hard in the yard, and just ran. Didn't look back once, all the way to my car. I threw myself in and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. I looked back at the house. He was standing in the yard in his underwear, face still covered in that smeared makeup, just staring at my car. Then he started walking towards me, slowly, still laughing. I started the engine and floored it. I kept checking my rearview mirror the entire drive home to make sure he wasn't following me. He wasn't. I went straight home and locked myself in my room. My boys started blowing up my phone asking for the video. I sent it. They watched it, and not a single one of them believed it was real. They thought I staged it, hired an actor, the whole thing, said it had to be fake. But it wasn't fake. That man was real. I called the police and told them everything. They said they'd check it out. They went to the house and came back saying it was empty. But I have the video. I've watched it 100 times. You can see him clear as day, hear him talking to himself, hear that scream. School's back in session now, but I take a completely different route every single day, making sure I never go anywhere near that house. I even deleted all of my social media and quit whatever stupid challenges, because I can't stop thinking about it, and I keep asking myself, what would have happened if he had caught me? If I had been even a little slower, if he'd caught me before I made it out that window, I don't even want to think about what would have happened. Honestly, I'm just glad I'll never have to find out. The tornado season hit Nashville way too early that year. I was only 10 years old, and I was home alone with my mom. My dad was away on a long-distance business trip. The whole city was being slammed by a massive, violent thunderstorm. It was so incredibly intense that everything outside went completely pitch black. Even though it was the middle of the day, the nights were honestly even worse. Mom tucked me into bed around 9 o'clock. My bedroom was upstairs, right at the very end of the hallway, while Mom slept downstairs on the main floor. The storm just kept getting worse and worse as the night dragged on. I could hear the rain violently pelting against my window, and the thunder was getting louder and closer by the second. I'm not usually scared of storms, but this specific one just felt completely different and way more intense. Around midnight, I jolted awake to a massive clap of thunder that literally shook the entire house and made my bed vibrate. "Mom!" I screamed out, squeezing my pillow as tight as I could. My heart was pounding like crazy against my chest. I had this incredibly eerie feeling that something absolutely horrible was about to happen. I got out of bed and opened my door. I stepped out into the hallway, and I immediately felt this bizarre, chilling vibe. The whole house just felt completely different. I walked toward the stairs and peeked down into the living room. The street light outside was shining through the window, illuminating just enough for me to see what was down there. And what I saw gave me absolute, total goosebumps. The living room was completely trashed. Our couch was ripped to shreds with the stuffing scattered absolutely everywhere, looking like someone had gone crazy on it with a knife. There were deep slash marks all over the cushions. The coffee table had been flipped upside down. A broken lamp was shattered on the floor, and the front door was hanging slightly open, just enough to see that the lock had been completely busted. Muddy boot prints were tracked across the floor, leading straight from the entrance into the hallway. Someone had broken in. I just stood there, completely frozen. I couldn't move, and I couldn't even breathe. I desperately wanted to see my mom, so I crept down the stairs as quietly as I possibly could. I finally reached her bedroom door. It was closed. I slowly pushed it open. There was a tiny blue nightlight plugged into the wall. It was pretty dark, but I could still see. Mom was in bed, lying on her side, with her back turned toward the door. "Mom, Mom, wake up. Someone is inside our house." She didn't answer me. I took one step closer. "Mom, please, wake up." I walked around to the other side of the bed to see her face. And that's when I noticed something lurking in the corner of the room. It looked like a guy was crouching down right next to the bed, as if he had been hiding the entire time. The moment I spotted him, he slowly stood up and unfolded himself right out of the shadows. He was incredibly tall and thin, and he was staring directly at me. My breathing got super fast, and my heart was racing like crazy. My brain went completely numb, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. I was waiting for him to jump out and scream at me, or for my mom to stand up. But neither of them made a single move. Suddenly, a wet, choking sound echoed from deep within the silence of the room. I jumped and I whipped around to look at my mom. Her body shuddered slightly as blood began to bubble up from her mouth. "Mom!" I screamed. I ran straight for the light switch and flipped it on. The room exploded into bright light, and I saw everything clearly. A knife was plunged deep into her stomach. Her shirt was completely soaked in blood. Her eyes were wide open but completely vacant, staring into nothingness. That choking sound had been her last breath. I looked back over at the corner. The man was still standing there, just staring at me. Before he could even take a single step forward, I let out a blood-curdling shriek and ran straight through the front door and into the street, screaming at the top of my lungs for help. A neighbor heard me and immediately called 911. I don't remember much of anything after that. Everything just went completely black. I woke up in a hospital bed. There were police officers inside my room asking me all kinds of questions. What happened? What did I see? I told them every single thing I could remember. They wrote it all down and asked me to describe the man. I tried my best, but I couldn't remember his face at all, except for the fact that he was tall and thin, had bony hands, and just stared at me without saying a single word. The police told me they had searched the entire house, but they couldn't find him. He escaped through the back door. They found more muddy footprints leading out into the backyard. They searched the whole area and hunted for him, but they never found him or caught him. He simply vanished into the night, as if he had never even been there in the first place. But my mom was dead, so I knew he was real and that it wasn't just some horrible nightmare, even though I desperately wished it was. My dad moved us out of the city a month after the funeral. He started hiring people to go on his business trips for him. He almost never leaves me alone anymore. I can't sleep in my own room anymore, so I sleep with my dad with every single light turned on. Because every time I close my eyes, I see that man standing in the corner, and I watch him unfold himself out of the darkness. I see my mom's eyes staring into nothingness, and I hear that awful choking sound. I break down crying all the time, and I tell my dad that I wish that guy had just killed me too. He says that keeping me alive is the only act of mercy that keeps him going. The police said it was probably just a robbery gone wrong, and that he broke in thinking nobody was home. They think he panicked when my mom woke up and killed her, but I don't believe that's true at all, because he had plenty of time to run away when he heard me coming, but instead, he stayed hidden in that corner and waited for me to find him. What did he actually achieve by completely destroying our entire world?